we've got Muzan Kibutsuji from Demon Slayer. And just to be clear, the version we're using here is from the anime all the way up to the latest movie this year. So, let's talk about his stats. Muzan's got insane regeneration, almost instant, which makes him extremely hard to take down. He's super fast, can move faster than the eye can track, and his strength and destructive power are nothing to scoff at. He can slice through multiple Hashira-level fighters without breaking a sweat. He also has a bunch of deadly abilities, like turning his body into spikes, shape-shifting, and manipulating blood to attack in all sorts of creative ways. Classic Demon Slayer fans know he's basically near unstoppable in his own universe. But here's the thing, in classic Dragon Ball, King Piccolo is on another level. His speed, raw power, and key attacks are just insane compared to Muzan. King Piccolo could basically vanish, hit Muzan with a full-powered ki blast, or completely obliterate him before he even has a chance to regenerate. That's why, despite all of Muzan's crazy abilities, he ends up in our third category, stops at King Piccolo level. His regeneration keeps him alive against most foes, but against DB Classic top-tier fighters like King Piccolo, sorry, no chance. Next up, we've got Blackbeard from One Piece. Now, this is the version we're considering, after he gets both the Yami Yami no Mi and Gura Gura no Mi, which makes him one of the scariest pirates in his universe. So, what makes Blackbeard so dangerous? First, his Yami Yami no Mi power allows him to manipulate darkness, and even in theory, nullify some abilities of his opponents. Some people say it could cancel ki attacks, but let's be real, it's not a guaranteed ki nullifier, especially against someone like a Dragon Ball fighter. Then he's got the Gura Gura no Mi, which can cause massive tremors and explosions, basically earthquakes, on a huge scale. Combine that with his crazy durability, and he's tough to take down. But here's the catch. In classic Dragon Ball, characters like King Piccolo and Piccolo Jr. move at speeds and hit with power that's just on another level. Blackbeard doesn't have the raw speed to dodge ki blasts or react to attacks that move faster than the eye can track. Even with his powers, he wouldn't get the chance to use them fully before getting overwhelmed. So, even though he's an absolute powerhouse in One Piece, he lands in our second category, wins, but with difficulty. He could win, but there's a real chance he might not get past Piccolo Jr., depending on the story. That's why he's here strong, dangerous, but not untouchable in classic Dragon Ball. Alright, next up, we've got Susuka Aizen from Bleach. And just to be clear, the version we're talking about is without the Hogyoku, so he's not immortal. Aizen is insanely smart, and he has the Kyuka Suskatsu, which allows him to create perfect illusions that can trick anyone who sees them. He's also fast, an expert swordsman, and has massive spiritual pressure that would intimidate most opponents in his own universe. But here's the catch. In classic Dragon Ball, Piccolo Jr. has some serious advantages. First, he can regenerate, so even if Aizen lands a devastating attack, Piccolo can recover quickly. Second, Piccolo Jr. is extremely smart. If he figures out how Aizen's Kyuka Suskatsu works quickly, he could do exactly what Yamamoto did in Bleach, but with Dragon Ball level power. That means he could use himself as bait, trap Aizen, and unleash a full-powered ki blast at point-blank range, completely annihilating him. So, in this case, Aizen falls into our second category, wins, but with difficulty. He could win, but it would be super hard. And honestly, if Piccolo Jr. understands his illusions fast enough, Aizen's chances drop drastically. Everything really depends on the story. Alright, now we've got Hisoka Moro from Hunter x Hunter. This is the version most people know from the anime, where he's at his peak as a tricky and deadly fighter. Hisoka is insanely agile and has incredible reflexes. He can dodge and counter almost anything that comes his way. His main weapon is bungee gum, which lets him stretch and manipulate his aura like rubber or sticky gum, giving him creative and unpredictable attacks. He's also super strategic and can read his opponent's moves, making him a master at turning fights in his favor. But here's the problem. In classic Dragon Ball, King Piccolo is on a completely different level, with a power level of around 260. He has massive strength, explosive kick attacks, and speed that's just off the charts. His energy attacks could easily obliterate Hisoka before he even gets a chance to react or set up his tricks. Hisoka's bungee gum is clever, but it doesn't scale anywhere near King Piccolo's destructive power or speed. That's why, despite Hisoka being dangerous in his own universe, he lands in our third category, stops at King Piccolo level. He's strong, smart, and tricky, but against Dragon Ball Classic top-tier fighters like King Piccolo, he just doesn't have the raw firepower to survive. Alright, now let's talk about Toguro from Yu Hakusho, one of the most iconic villains from the Dark Tournament arc. Toguro's power is all about superhuman physical ability, demonic Kiku manipulation, shockwave generation, and insane durability. At his peak, the 100% power form, he's devastating. He can create shockwaves with a punch that crack the ground and destroy the arena. And he's even shown carrying the entire Dark Tournament ring, weighing over 1,000 tons, effortlessly on his back. That's a truly wild strength feat that shows just how much raw physical force he has. so you can see why he's feared in his world. His punches can send opponents flying over kilometers, and he can produce massive air bullets that are hard to dodge. But now let's compare him to Mercenary Tao from Dragon Ball. Tao isn't just a martial artist. He's shown throwing a massive concrete pillar over thousands of kilometers, yes, over 2,300 kilometers across battlefields, at hypersonic velocities. This feat shows extreme strength and precision, and it also sets up his speed advantage. Because he isn't just physically strong, he's fast enough to catch and ride that pillar right after throwing it. Tao also has other tricks. His Do-Don-Ray Ki Blast, the ability to deflect bullets with a shoe, and those deadly martial arts skills we see in Dragon Ball early arcs. Together, these make him more than just brute strength. Now, could Toguro beat Mercenary Tao? Maybe, but it would be incredibly hard. Even with all his brute force and energy attacks, Mercenary Tao's long-range ki punches, battlefield control, speed, and unique damage output give him a real edge in a prolonged fight. Toguro might land hits, he might resist blows, but Tao would constantly pressure him with techniques Toguro isn't used to defending against. So in terms of our classic Dragon Ball tier list, Toguro lands in the 4th category, Mercenary Tao level. He's a seriously strong villain, but against someone like Mercenary Tao, he'd have to fight with everything he's got. And even then, his chances are slim, making this slot the most fitting. Okay, now we've got Lord Boros from One Punch Man, the leader of the Dark Matter Thieves, and one of the most dangerous alien invaders we've seen in anime. His whole arc is about searching the universe for someone strong enough to give him a real fight. Let's break down what makes Boros so formidable. First, his regeneration is absolutely insane. He can recover from massive damage almost instantly, far beyond what most characters can handle. This makes him much tougher to take down than someone like Piccolo Jr., whose regeneration is solid but not on Boros' level. Boros also has immense speed and reflexes, moving fast enough to overwhelm opponents with rapid strikes in his meteoric burst form. And his physical strength is nothing to joke about. He can punch or kick with enough force to send an opponent hurtling great distances, even into space, and he's fast enough to land serious hits on extremely powerful foes. But where Boros really stands out is his energy projection. In his meteoric burst form, he can fire the collapsing star-roaring cannon, a massive energy attack that, according to Boros himself, was powerful enough to destroy an entire planet if unleashed in full. That's on par with planetary-scale destructive potential, far above typical city-level or moon-level attacks. Now let's compare that with Piccolo Jr. in classic Dragon Ball. Piccolo Jr. was already strong enough to destroy the moon with his kickle attacks and possibly devastate a small planet with full power, which is huge for that era of Dragon Ball. But even so, his raw destructive output and speed don't quite hit the same planetary level that Boros can threaten with his ultimate attack, and his regeneration, while good, isn't as extreme as Boros's. However, and this is key, Piccolo Jr. still has better tactical combat experience against huge ki users, and in a direct ki versus ki clash, the sheer explosive power and layered attacks of Dragon Ball fighters could turn the tide. So where does Boros land in our tier list? Because of his planetary scale attacks and superior regeneration compared to most classic Dragon Ball foes, he actually places in our top category, first clears Dragon Ball easily. He's one of the few villains so far who might even be on the level of early Dragon Ball Z Saiyan Saga fighters, thanks to that overwhelming destructive potential and recovery. Alright, next up we've got Kaiju No.9 from the anime, not the manga version. Just to clarify, we're talking about the anime feats here, which show his monstrous potential and regenerative abilities. Kaiju No.9 is a massive, highly adaptable kaiju with insane durability, and a healing factor that lets him recover from injuries incredibly fast, similar to other regenerating villains we've seen. He's also extremely strong, able to smash through large structures and overwhelm multiple opponents at once. His agility and combat instincts make him a serious threat in his own universe. But when we put him up against King Piccolo from classic Dragon Ball, things get tricky. King Piccolo has a power level of around 260, with incredible speed, destructive ki attacks, and massive strength. Kaiju No.9's regeneration is impressive, but King Piccolo's sheer energy output is on another level. He can attack faster than Kaiju can react and hit with ki capable of destroying large areas in an instant. So even though Kaiju No.9 is dangerous and could potentially survive some attacks, he would struggle to keep up with King Piccolo's speed and ki precision. If he managed to pass King Piccolo, it wouldn't be by a large margin and would be extremely difficult, fully dependent on the scenario and story. That's why Kaiju No.9 lands in our third category, stops at King Piccolo level. He's powerful and regenerates fast, but against the top-tier fighters of classic Dragon Ball, his chances are slim, and it would take perfect conditions for him to even get past the big bad. Alright, now we've got Madara Uchiha from Naruto, one of the most infamous villains in his universe. We're considering him at his peak without scaling from fillers or powers that aren't in the main anime, but he's still incredibly dangerous. Madara has a ton of abilities. His regeneration is insane, thanks to his Rinnegan and Hashirama cells, which lets him recover from severe injuries almost instantly. He also has Genjutsu Sharingan techniques, massive Susanoo armor, and devastating long-range attacks capable of leveling large areas. Combine that with incredible speed, reflexes, and battlefield awareness, and he's a nightmare for almost anyone. But when we put him against Piccolo Jr. from classic Dragon Ball, things get tricky. Piccolo Jr. at this stage has a power level of around 360, incredible ki attacks, superhuman speed, and destructive energy, capable of destroying the moon and possibly a small planet. Even with Madara's regeneration, Susanoo, and Jutsu, Piccolo's speed and raw destructive output would make it extremely hard for him to land decisive attacks, especially if Piccolo is smart and adapts to Madara's techniques. Madara might have some chance to survive or even land hits, but it would be extremely difficult and would depend heavily on the story. Any victory would require very specific conditions and careful tactics. That's why for our classic Dragon Ball tier list, Madara lands in the second category, wins but with difficulty. He's a powerhouse with insane skills, but against the sheer speed, ki, and destructive power of Dragon Ball classic top-tier fighters, winning is far from guaranteed. Let's dive in. We've got Antares, the Monarch of Destruction from Solo Leveling, the final antagonist and the strongest monarch in the series lore, known as the King of Dragons and Ultimate Destroyer. And yes, this is the version from the anime Webtoon universe, with all of his most devastating powers fully on display. So let's talk about what makes Antares such a threat. First, he has immense strength and nearly unparalleled speed, able to react to attacks and keep up with even the most powerful hunters in his world. His durability and regeneration let him shrug off blows that would cripple most enemies, making him almost unstoppable on the battlefield. He also has the terrifying Breath of Destruction, a fire attack capable of instantly reducing elite hunters to ash, and Dragon's Fear, a soul-shaking shout that can plunge weaker opponents into panic. On top of that, he can transform into a massive red dragon, unleashing even more destructive force. Now compare that to King Piccolo from classic Dragon Ball. King Piccolo has a power level around 260, with explosive ki attacks, extreme speed, and the ability to destroy large geographical areas with concentrated energy. Even with Antares' regen and destructive fire, King Piccolo's ki mastery and combat speed create a totally different kind of battle environment where energy blasts travel faster than conventional attacks and combat moves at lightning pace. Antares' regeneration and durability definitely give him staying power, but against Dragon Ball energy techniques and Piccolo's superior ki precision, the battle would be incredibly close and tense. If Antares did manage to get past King Piccolo, it wouldn't be by much, and it would be very difficult. Everything would depend heavily on the story and how the fight plays out. That's why Antares lands in our first category, clears Dragon Ball easily. His massive destructive potential, regeneration, speed, and durability put him up there with the strongest we've seen so far. So much so that he's one of the few characters who might even be on the level of early Dragon Ball Z fighters, not just classic DB warriors.
Now let's wrap things up with Stain, the hero killer from My Hero Academia, the guy who earned his title by hunting down pro-heroes he considered fake and unworthy. Wiki does villains. Stain's got some interesting traits. His blood curdle quirk lets him paralyze an opponent after tasting their blood, and that paralysis can last minutes depending on the person's blood type. He's also lightning fast in close combat, dodging fire, ice, and high-speed attacks from heroes like Ida Todoroki and Midoriya. But it's important to note that his power relies on getting close and drawing blood first. He's super agile, roughs it out in extended fights, and even tanks heavy hits from multiple strong heroes before he goes down. But here's the kicker. When we bring him into the Dragon Ball Classic universe and compare him to someone like Yamcha at his peak in the desert, Stain still doesn't have the raw destructive power or ki projection that DB characters rely on. Stain is a fearsome assassin and close-range fighter, but in a world where battles are decided by giant energy blasts, ki speed, and planet-level attacks, his strengths don't scale up enough. Honestly, we had a hard time even finding a villain weak enough to match Desert Yamcha, and then we found Stain. That's right! This guy's paralysis, speed, and swords aren't enough to compete with Piccolo's ki, Tao's techniques, or even characters with more obvious battle feats in Dragon Ball. So Stain lands in our 5th category, Desert Yamcha level, and yeah, it was way more difficult than you'd think to find someone at this level. Who knew the hero killer would end up here? If you enjoyed this breakdown, smash that like, hit subscribe, and let me know in the comments who you want to see in the next tier list. Catch you next time. Bye!